You assume that everything that exists must have a cause. You rarely question this assumption. You rely on it when you search for explanations. You rely on it when you assign responsibility. You rely on it when you try to understand yourself. Yet Ibn Arabi challenged this foundation. He asked whether causality applies to existence itself, or only to the forms that appear within existence. He proposed that the most fundamental reality does not come into being, does not begin, and therefore does not require a cause. This claim is not poetic. It is logical. If everything requires a cause, explanation never ends. Something must exist without depending on something else. The question is direct. Is there something that does not arise, yet is always present? Ibn Arabi worked within a tradition that treated metaphysics as inquiry rather than doctrine. He did not attempt to construct a closed system of belief. He investigated the nature of being as it can be known. His writings repeatedly returned to a single concern. What does it mean for something to exist? For Ibn Arabi, this was not an abstract puzzle. It was a practical question about the structure of reality and the structure of knowing. He regarded philosophy, theology, and spirituality as different approaches to the same investigation. This approach invites a simple challenge. Are his conclusions theoretical ideas or descriptions of something that can be recognized directly? You are trained to look for origins. When something happens, you ask why. When something changes, you look for what produced the change. This habit is reinforced by education and culture. It is reinforced by everyday problem solving. Over time, causality becomes synonymous with understanding. But you may not notice how quickly this habit becomes absolute. You begin to assume that nothing can exist unless something else produces it. This assumption feels obvious. But feeling obvious is not the same as being examined. The moment you state that everything has a cause, a deeper question appears. What causes the principle of causality itself? If every cause requires another cause, then explanation never reaches completion. Each answer produces a new question. This is known as infinite regression. Ibn Arabi did not treat this as a technical problem. He treated it as a pointer. If explanation never completes, then explanation cannot be the ultimate ground of existence. Something must exist that does not require explanation in terms of prior causes. Otherwise, existence would have no foundation. This is not a religious claim. It is a logical necessity. There must be something that simply is, not produced, not assembled, not derived. The unresolved question remains: what could exist without depending on anything else? When Ibn Arabi spoke of light, he was not referring to a physical phenomenon. He used the word to indicate self-knowing existence, that which knows itself by being what it is. In simpler terms, awareness. Not awareness of something, just awareness as such. This is not a substance. It is not an object. It is the fact that experience is happening at all. Everything you know appears within this knowing. The question becomes subtle. Is this knowing something that appears, or is it the condition that allows appearance? If it is the condition, can it be produced by what depends on it? You notice thoughts. You notice sensations. You notice memories. Each of these appears within awareness. You never encounter a thought first and then awareness later. Awareness is already present when anything appears. This suggests a simple ordering. Experience depends on awareness. Awareness does not depend on experience. If something depends on something else, it cannot be the cause of that thing. This leads to a quiet conclusion. Awareness cannot be caused by experience. It cannot be produced by the contents that appear within it. The paradox arises naturally. Can something that precedes all experience be an effect of experience? You usually say I and mean a person, a body, a history, a personality. But you are aware of the body. You are aware of the history. You are aware of your personality. This raises a simple question. Does I refer to what is known or to what knows? Ibn Arabi suggested that true identity lies with the knowing, not with the known. The person appears in awareness. The person changes. Awareness does not show the same kind of change. If awareness is uncaused, and if awareness is what you truly are, then your deepest identity is not a result. It is a presence. The idea of an uncaused ground unsettles many assumptions. Systems of control depend on predictability. Predictability depends on causality. If something exists without cause, it cannot be fully managed through explanation. It cannot be reduced to formulas. Psychologically, the sense of being a caused entity supports personal narratives. You can explain yourself through past events. You can justify yourself through history. If your deepest reality is uncaused, these narratives lose their ultimate authority. This does not erase them. It changes their status. They become stories, not definitions. The discomfort does not come from danger. It comes from the loss of conceptual certainty. What exactly feels threatened? You can accept the idea of an uncaused ground and still experience yourself as a produced entity. This is common. It reveals an important distinction. Knowledge is something you acquire. Recognition is something you notice. Ibn Arabi emphasized recognition. He did not encourage collecting beliefs. He encouraged seeing what is already present. You cannot observe awareness as an object. You cannot locate it in time. You can only notice that it is already here. This noticing is not dramatic. It does not add anything. It removes a misunderstanding. The paradox remains intact. How do you recognize what has never started? If you accept that not everything requires a final explanation, life does not become meaningless. It becomes simpler. You still seek practical causes. You still solve problems. You still learn. What changes is the demand that existence itself justify itself. Meaning becomes participation rather than conclusion. You engage with life without requiring a final answer to why there is something rather than nothing. This does not produce indifference. It produces a different kind of humility. You recognize limits of explanation without abandoning intelligence. The open question remains: can you live fully without demanding an ultimate reason for being? You began with the belief that everything must be caused. You examined this belief and found its limits. You saw that causes explain changes, not existence itself. You noticed that awareness is present before any particular experience. Nothing new appeared. Nothing vanished. The shift occurred in understanding. There is something that does not come into being, something that does not emerge from prior conditions. If this uncaused presence is what you truly are, then loss and gain apply only to what appears within it. The final question returns quietly. If what you are has no cause, what could it ever lose?